Welcome to For the Love of You. Thank you for joining us today. Today we have Allison Downs from Madonna Rehabilitation Center, and she is a
provisionally licensed mental health practitioner.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. That's wanted to make sure I got that correct. Do you want to? Thank you for coming and joining us today.
Absolutely.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about what that means?
Sure. So I am a mental health counselor. I finished my schooling, did an internship, and then in Nebraska you get your provisional license. You do a few more hours with a supervisor, and then once you've completed those hours, then you're fully licensed. So I do mental health counseling for inpatient stroke survivors and other people who've experienced injury or illness and are rehabilitating at Madonna.
And so when you say you do counseling, what does that pertain? Is that more about the whole being of a person? So
yes.
Nutrition, wellness, stress levels, things like that, or is it just the mental health part?
Is all of it, because I think mental health is all of it. I think that you can't look at one person from just one specific angle. You have to take into everything. So how they're eating, what their day-to-day activity was prior to stroke or injury is just as important as the injury or the stroke. And so if I want to help them get back to normal, whatever that new normal is going to look like, then I'm there to emotionally support them, but also help them, work through any challenges they may be facing as they look towards that next level of going home or to a skilled facility, whatever that is for them.
Yeah, that's great. Why is this important?
Because it is taking into account the whole person. So you're really having conversations with them, connecting with them about what's important to them, what are their values that are going to guide them through a very challenging time in their life. And if you are just sitting down and only talking about their physical well-being, you're missing a huge piece of that pie. And I think that wellness and holistic perspective really allows both counselors, physicians, the whole medical team to meet that person where they're at and get to know them as best as they can and then help them in the best way possible.
Wonderful. So you've kind of used the word wellness quite a bit. Will you describe to the viewers what you mean by that, just so that everyone understands?
Yeah, well, I'm sure there's many definitions out there, but wellness for me is looking at health from a multidimensional perspective. So there's a lot of wellness frameworks out there, and one of the earliest frameworks that was developed was for college students, which is great, but their needs are a little bit different than maybe older stroke survivors. So a wellness framework for somebody who's survived a stroke and is maybe retirement age is going to be a little bit different than a college student. So I've identified 6 pieces of that framework that I kind of look at when I'm talking about wellness. The first one is cognitive, and then like the physical piece, and I'll go into more information about these in a second. So cognitive, physical, social, emotional, spiritual, and financial. So it's a big piece.
Yeah.
And it can be overwhelming if you think you have to do every single piece of that wellness framework perfectly, but it's more about looking at, okay, what am I focusing on right now to be healthy? And so I remind people when they're inpatient that right now their job is to get physically stronger. And we look at all of those pieces too, but that piece may be taking up a large part of their time. Mm-hmm. And then as they kind of get used to the physical, rehabilitation side of it, then maybe they kind of think about, okay, so when I go home, I maybe want to eat a little bit differently. So what, can I eat, what sort of diet tips do I need to be working on? Can I talk to the dietitian here at Madonna? Or I want to incorporate more of a spiritual practice, so I'm going to talk to the chaplain or the father here at Madonna about what that piece could look like in the future. And they start incorporating these, and then pretty soon they, are kind of attending to all of them and feel healthy on a variety of levels. So sure. The cognition, what activities are you involved in? Do you challenge your brain with hobbies and interests and getting curious about things? Socially, Are there relationships that you take part in, face to face, that are positive and supportive for you? Sometimes they overlap, so if you're really active in your spiritual community, they might have like a big social aspect for you.
Sure.
And then emotionally, how are you managing stress? Day to day, how are you talking to yourself about your struggles? Can you incorporate more positive self-talk into that? And then financially, for older people, finances may be, weighing on them, and if, the medical team isn't asking about the barriers to getting prescription medications or getting nutritious meals, then they may be missing that piece. So it's important to look at that piece as well, particularly for older adults.
Or even if you're the breadwinner and now you've had a stroke. And so
Exactly.
then that alters your pathway as well. So if
Exactly.
you're financially the supporter of your family, or the only person who brings in any finances, and have a stroke and now can't work,
Yep.
plus then your medical bills, those stresses can then pile up on
Exactly.
those patients as
Exactly.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are some strategies to incorporate wellness or to alter your stress level just in your normal day-to-day life?
I think if you're trying to manage stress, looking at a wellness framework is a really nice place to kind of start. So if you are looking at that piece of the pie and you're like, well, I haven't really had any interactions with some social support lately, I haven't talked to my friends or sat down for coffee, then maybe just calling somebody. For spouses or caregivers whose person is at Madonna doing rehabilitation, they want to be there for caregiver training, and they may not have time to go out and meet with friends. So maybe just calling somebody on the phone could be a nice stress reliever. Or that cognition piece. If you haven't had any time for your hobbies and interests, and you know that your loved one is in physical therapy and you don't need to be there for physical or for caregiver training, then maybe spend 30 minutes reading a book or working on a word search while you're waiting for your loved one to come back from therapy. So there's lots of little things that you can do day to day based on that model to incorporate stress management strategies. So taking a few moments to just take a few deep breaths can really, trigger the brain that it's okay to slow down, it's okay to relax those muscles, lower the heart rate, and that is very stress relieving. So I like to, look at the pie piece as a whole and say, okay, what area needs a little work? And then just choose one small thing to maybe do some stress management around that.
Perfect. That's great. So I heard you talk a little bit about caregivers. In your program at Madonna, is there a patient pathway and then a caregiver pathway, or do you just give that information out with the patient?
A little bit of both. So at Madonna, we have, particularly for stroke survivors, we have a 10-day class that they can go to. It's education and support, because everybody there is a stroke survivor, and it's inpatient. So it gets added to their schedule along with other therapies. And I always encourage caregivers to come so that they're hearing the information, because it's just as much for them as it is for the stroke survivor. And I meet one-on-one with inpatient stroke survivors and patients, but also family members if they, just want to talk and process through some things. So I am available for both patient and family.
Wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful. And we were talking the show, but you also have been to the Madonna and Nebraska Med Stroke Support Group.
Yes.
So you do speak with this stuff with the caregivers and the patients there too.
Mm-hmm.
So they do see you afterwards as well. So if someone wanted to come see you speak, they could
Yeah.
come to one of the support groups as
Yes,
well.
yeah. That's a huge piece for, when they're at Madonna, at the acute rehab level of care, oftentimes they're looking towards going home, and that can be really scary, and that transition can be very difficult. So I encourage families and stroke survivors to come back to that community group, because they may recognize somebody who is doing rehab with them. Family members can talk and connect and share their experiences and what has been going well and things they've learned. So those support groups here in Omaha, and then I've looked at stroke support groups in communities where patients who are discharging to, if it's not in the area. So Iowa, South Dakota, surrounding
Sure.
states, so that they have that support when they leave.
And that's helpful for those, like you said, pieces of those
Yes.
pies to kind of help build off, well, what do you do for stress? And how do you
Exactly.
get out of the house because you're kind of the same situation as I am? And
Yep.
how do you find time for yourself and
Yeah.
things? So yeah, those are great ideas.
It's a great place to build relationships and get support.
Yeah. What else can you talk about to help our patients that maybe are already at home who aren't in your classes at Madonna, but some helpful hints for them out at home?
I always say try things out, and if it doesn't work, shift it up. So you may get home and think that, well, this is how I'm going to do things, but you may find that that doesn't work. So, try something else, get some fresh eyes, maybe just take a break from something, take some things off your plate. I've had many friends and stroke survivors say that the stroke has really given them a chance to slow down and connect to what was really important to them. So family, friends, and they were able to take some things off their plate, and that helped in terms of just stress management, but also overall rehabilitation. I think wellness, it's important to remember that it can be in many steps. So, maybe when you get up in the morning, you take 5 deep breaths, and that's your stress management for the day. Or if something comes up later and you're feeling stressed, sit down and enjoy some aromatherapy. Maybe go outside and smell some fresh cut grass, or light a candle or something. It can just be really small steps to help trigger your brain that it's time to relax and getting back to managing those things.
Wonderful. You talked about nutrition. What are some helpful hints that you send off in your class about nutrition?
Nutrition, I think the one that I always say is look at your plate, and if there's no color on it, go find something with color and put it on your plate.
Okay.
Whether it's frozen peas because they're green, or chopping up an apple, but just incorporating whole foods into your routine. And if you have any questions, the dietitians at Hy-Vee has some, resources that you could talk to. You could talk to your physician about dietary recommendations, but eating well is really important. So when I'm talking with family members, I always ask, did you sleep well, and are you getting good nutrition? Because you have to have energy, good energy, to get you through the day. And if your blood sugars are crashing because you haven't been eating well, you're going to be more stressed and your body's going to be more fatigued. So.
Right. Yeah, those are great examples. How can, we kind of discussed a little bit, but how can the caregivers benefit from the wellness perspective?
I think it's just as important for them to look at that pie as well and say, okay, so this time frame, this chapter of my life is really focused on helping my loved one, but what are the things that I can do that are going to incorporate and support some of those other pieces of the pie? So bringing a book to read during therapy, or walking around the hospital between sessions, so that you're getting some movement, you're doing something for your brain. Looking towards that next level of care, going home or working with a skilled facility. Is there support that you can call and say, I'm going to run a few errands, or I want to go out with my girlfriends to a movie or something like that? Can I reach out to somebody? Is it a respite network that I need to connect with, or somebody from my church community or the neighborhood that could come and help out for a few hours while I go do some things? And just thinking about spreading those pieces, working within your social network, and getting the support that you need in terms of those pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah, those are great. I love that you brought up respite. There is multi organizations here just in Omaha and the Lincoln area that have the respite information, and you can Google those, and maybe even the number. I don't know
off the top of my
offhand.
head, no, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. And they're more than happy to discuss if there's programs that are available that you can go out and go get your groceries. You can run and get a haircut, or a massage, or just go for a walk around the park where your caregiver, as a caregiver, you need to take care of yourself to allow that ability to take care of your loved one. And so if you're feeling like I'm the only one who can be here and only one who can take care of this one, please reach out for respite. There's some really great programs here in this area that are able to help, even if it's a half an hour at a time.
Yeah.
So
it's really important.
So taking care of yourself is just as important as taking care of that loved one. What is some good information to end this with, to let everyone know on a good note?
I think it's really important to remember that stress management and kind of that wellness perspective doesn't have to be huge and overwhelming. It can just be 5 quick minutes of sitting down and breathing, or grabbing an apple, or sitting outside and getting some fresh air. Like it really is as simple as that, and those little moments can make a big difference.
Perfect. Well, we thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
We're happy that to have you and excited to share this information with everyone. Thank you for joining us today for The Love of You. We look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.